Okay, we're going to take a little bit of time and maybe just discuss some of the very basics of DXing. If you're just getting into DXing, or if it's something you always wanted to try, and or maybe you've been doing some DXing for quite a while and just have upgraded to a stronger antenna or an amplifier, or something that's really going to put you out there in the chase, especially during this January 2018 DXpedition of Bouvet. And Hal here is going to actually be on the island, so we're extremely lucky to be speaking with him and just touching base on basically DXing and what it is. And what does DX even stand for, Hal?
DX stands for distance, and I'm not sure the root of it or the origins of it, but in our vernacular it means distance, and in our hobby, of course, it means trying to make contact with distant stations.
Right.
And typically that means outside of your own home country.
And how does what is a DXpedition?
Okay, a DXpedition is a group or a few ham radio operators getting together and going to a location for the express purpose of making contacts with other hams around the world in pursuit of the DXCC award, which is the American Radio Relay League's prestigious award for that segment of the hobby that, that we pursue. Right. Currently, there's 339 entities available in the DXCC program. Entities or countries, the terms used interchangeably.
Sure.
And so, for those of us and you that are DXers, the challenge is to see if you can make contact, a two-way contact with all 339 of these entities or countries. And
so DXing has to do with working different countries. It's a lot of fun. It's my favorite part of the ham radio hobby. So for us here in the United States, for example, Canada is a DX entity, as is Saudi Arabia is a DX entity. A lot of people live there. It's going to be easier for you to speak to someone in Canada for a new DXCC country, or an ATNO as we call it, which stands for all-time new one, right?
All-time new one, sure.
An ATNO means an all-time new one for you that you've never worked that country on any band or mode. It's the first time you've worked them, and when you get into DXing, that's really exciting. Every ATNO that you get is really exciting. But all the DXCC entities, have people in them for the most part. So, working Britain as a DXCC entity might be fairly easy. Sure. The DXpedition comes into place when you got a DX entity that's very rare. And the rareness could have to do with the fact that it's an uninhabited island. As a matter of fact, where Hal's heading is the most remote island in the world. And that's why all the excitement, that's why you hear all the talk recently about 3Y0Z. It's been a long time since anybody's been on the island, and at a great expense and a lot of work by the team that's going there. They plan to activate that country so people like us can try to work it for a new one.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, for us to go there, and then just for the hobby itself, and for DXing in general. There hasn't been anything like this, to my knowledge, ever. The magnitude of this, I think after all said and done, every superlative that you can come up with in terms of DXpeditioning will have been met or exceeded.
So when you get down to this island, and I know it's a lot of work just getting there with flights and long boat trips and everything like that, what does somebody do when they hear you on the air? How do they go about contacting you? I understand you're going to be working split for the most part. I thought maybe we could just go over some of the basics of the terminology, so new guys can know what what's going on as far as when you're working split.
Yeah, the whole trick is to make sure that the transmitting frequency, the DX that's transmitting, is on a given frequency. Then that frequency is clear, so that everybody else out in the world can hear that frequency. So we work split. We will listen in a range of frequencies somewhere other than our transmit frequency. And of course, we would like to keep our transmit frequency clear.
Right, so you don't want anybody else transmitting on your transmit frequency, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We would love that. And so we set up our VFO where we're operating split mode. We're listening in a range of frequencies, okay, which will be given. And so again, you listen for the range of frequencies that we're listening to, and we're transmitting on this frequency, on a separate VFO or variable frequency oscillator.
So they'll be listening to you here and calling for you there.
That's correct.
Keep the frequency clear that you're working on. What happens if somebody makes a mistake and forgets to hit the split button or something like that and calls on your frequency?
It happens. I mean, we recognize that. That's why they call us amateurs. And so if you do that, you don't need to come on and say I'm sorry or whatever. As soon as you realize you've made the mistake, move up.
Right. And others don't need to join in and tell him that he made the mistake.
No, that's the policemen that get on is probably the bane of a DXpedition. And we encourage people not to act as policemen. Right. Typically, if we see that our rate's declining, or rate, I'm meaning the number of QSOs that we make in a minute, let's say, then we might give a listen down on our transmit frequency to see if there's QRM or something going on. I mean, we can pretty much tell. And I think with the SDR, I think we'll be able to maybe see some of what's going on down there anyway on on the Maestro. So.
And if somebody does hear you in there and gets excited and wants to work you, what type of protocol do they have as far as calling you? Do you want full calls and or half calls, or how? Yeah. What's the guy on your end prefer? What's he listening for?
Obviously, we would like to have the full call, and we'd like to hear that full call, S9 plus, so we can log it in. But recognize that sometimes we might have to ask for clarification, or we only hear a partial call. But yes, please encourage the DXer to call us one time, use full call, and also to use standard phonetics. If somebody's using a Whiskey 8 HD and saying Whiskey 8 hot dog, we're not going to recognize that necessarily.
Yeah. So that's the key to remember, is that there's just, tens of thousands of people that are going to be calling you at the same time.
Absolutely.
And, a little bit of order and courtesy and, common sense will allow a lot more people to be able to work you.
That's right. Absolutely. It'll speed things along. At the end of the day, at the end of the DXpedition, more people will walk away from it smiling because they're in the log.
Right. So. Right. Okay, so I have a fairly substantial station at home, but what about the people that may have a small antenna, or or maybe the radio's only putting out 50 watts? What can they do to better their chances of getting you guys in the books in their logbook?
Well, first of all, there's still time to beef up the station, if that means putting up another wire antenna, or even connecting with another ham in the area that's got a better station. This is going to probably be the last opportunity to work Bouvet, which is the #2 most wanted DXEC entity, of the 339. The last major DXpedition there was in 1990, early 90, I think January of 90. Right. So, we're talking 28, 30 years ago. So you definitely do not want to miss the opportunity to work this. So for a casual DXer, I would encourage them to try to do whatever to get their station upgraded as best they can.
Definitely
at this point.
The first thing, yeah.
Assuming that cannot happen, don't give up hope. There will still be opportunities to work us as the pileups dwindle,
and the reason they dwindle is because that more and more people are working you. Correct. And they only want to work you once on each particular band or mode. Is that correct?
Well, that is the wishes of us. I mean, we would like to think that if you work us on a 20-meter phone, that you're not going to work us the next day on 20-meter phone.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So and as that happen and those people drop off, then somebody with maybe a smaller station, smaller antenna stands a better chance of working.
Sure. But you know, from a standpoint of, you know, what can you do? You know, my best advice is to get in there, to listen, to try to figure out if the operator does have a pattern in the way that he's working the split and calling, how he's doing that, and to stay with it. You know, to me, there's a couple of things that you just need to keep in mind. You need to be persistent with your operation. You need to, you know, don't get discouraged, and you need to be patient.
Right.
You definitely don't want to just throw your hands up and say, you know, I quit. You know, this is crazy.
Yeah. Especially for as big and rare as this entity is.
Yes.
You know, there's been DX entities that I've called for probably over an hour straight, and didn't get through. So so you have to hang in there, be persistent. You know, realize there's, you know, a lot of other people with the same goal as you.
Absolutely.
And keep at it, like you said.
Yeah, and then there's another aspect too. I think you need to keep a positive attitude, you know, throughout the process. You know, if you think you're not going to be successful with this, you know, you probably won't be successful.
Right.
But you know, for me, and probably I can speak for the other guys on the team. You know, we take no greater satisfaction than giving somebody an all-time new one, an AT&O.
Right.
I mean that's just the top in my book. I would rather do that than give some guy a band fill, you know, on a band.
Right.
And so I'm looking for these guys. I'm looking for weak stations.
Well, you guys have been working on this for years, and it's a lot of money and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So obviously that's one of the goals. That they want to work as many of us as they can. That's why they're going through all this trouble, spending all this money, and traveling all this distance. So we appreciate it, and I for one hope to work you for an ATN.
I certainly hope you can get with me. Send me an email at the end to say how I worked you, and
That's right.
You know, we will be uploading logs periodically to Club Log. I think last I read it was going to be maybe every 15 minutes or a half hour or something like that.
Nice.
So, you know, you definitely want to check if you have a sketchy contact or you're not sure.
Right.
You know, check Club Log to confirm.
Yeah, because the option is waiting another 30 years.
Perhaps. Perhaps.
Yeah.
But look forward to working with you.
I appreciate
really do,
that.
buddy.
Appreciate that.
Good luck.